Hello and welcome to the new Ashla podcast. Today, I am joined by Mike Elliott, the man, the myth, the legend. This guy is so deep in his communities and providing so much value to everyone around him. He is leading the Initiated Man Project, which is something he is putting together to help lead men into their authority and authenticity. He is also a part of the Mankind Project, which is a men's group that helps bring men into circles so that they can start working through their stuff and finding their authentic voice and develop a community that is powerful and insightful. I am so excited to have you here today because, as we were talking about before we started this episode, men's groups are something that I am so passionate about and something that needs to be brought more to light in this modern day culture with isolation being everywhere and everything since the pandemic. It's just, we need to find these circles so that we can get out of our heads and into our lives. So tell us a bit about yourself.
Yeah, men's work is just one of my deepest passions, which I've been a part of for 10 years now. And it's something I really needed. And, you know, when I think of me in my earlier years, which I imagine so many of the men listening might be in a position where they are. And I was just like you in this place where I followed the American dream. I got the good paying job. I attracted the amazing wife. I had the truck paid for in the driveway. I had a jet boat. I had a theater room in my basement. I seemed to have it all on paper. But for some reason, I was miserable. And I had no idea why. And it was really confusing. You know, for me, for anyone listening, I think it's just important to understand I'm just a human who is so devoted to doing the work because I needed the work. And so now I'm privileged, 10 years later, getting to support men in these really vulnerable places. But just so you get a sense of where I came from, I was married, had it all on paper, and I was completely empty and disconnected inside. It was so discouraging. I remember having these thoughts in my day-to-day life as I'd go to my job, like, what's wrong with me? Why can't I feel happy? I'm doing all the things that I was told to do, and I can't seem to find that place of inner freedom and peace and relaxation. I want it so bad. I'm doing all the things. Where is it? And I read all the books. I listened to all the podcasts, and it wasn't working. It was making me more stressed and more depressed. And I didn't understand that I was feeding my intellect, but I wasn't actually integrating what is the longest journey any human will make, and it's the one from their head to the heart. I didn't realize I wasn't in my heart. I didn't realize that. And so in the beginning, when I first met my wife, it was amazing. It was fireworks in the beginning, and then over the first, second, third, fourth, fifth year, it just started to get just flat. And then I remember the day that changed everything. I was sitting on my couch in the living room, and my wife walked in, and she looked at me and she said, "I'm done." And to be honest, I had no idea what she was talking about. And I said, "Done with what?" She said, "I'm done with this marriage. I can't do this." All of a sudden, my heart blew open in a way that I couldn't control. I couldn't shut it down. I couldn't numb it out. Couldn't repress it anymore. I had this flood of terror and panic moving through my whole body. I stood up, I stumbled into the kitchen, and I collapsed. Fell down on the floor, and I was in the fetal position, and I was shaking and crying, "I don't want to die. I don't want to die. I don't want to die." And then something happened. For the first time, it's almost as if I left my body. I hadn't had any big spiritual experiences up until this moment. And I left my body, my perspective left my body, and I could see myself on the kitchen floor, and the light bulb went off. I thought to myself, oh my God, I'm an infant that just lost his mother. And for those of you that are listening, I recreated day one of my life. I was separated from my mother at birth and set into an orphanage, and I was adopted. And adopted twice in the first year of my life. So it was the deepest wound that I had, the severance and the disconnection from the bond of my mother. and I recreated my biggest fear. I was so afraid of re-experiencing that hell that I had experienced day one of my life. I didn't even realize. I was so afraid of it. I co-created circumstances to manifest it. And it was one of the most painful days of my life. The next 2 weeks were hell because I couldn't turn off the feelings. She had left. I decided I didn't want to use. All of a sudden I had insight of all the ways that I was coping and soothing and numbing out. And it was through porn. It was through Netflix specials. It was through, marijuana. I had no idea until that moment. It was super sobering. And I didn't want to numb out anymore because it just ruined my life. Numbing out and all those coping strategies just screwed my life up. And it was so painful to feel all those feelings that there was a moment where I considered ending my life. I couldn't handle it. The thoughts, me believing that I was a monster, like, look at what I had done. And then a moment happened that was inspired by Oprah, actually. I remember her talking about her dark night of the soul and her describing that when she just hit that place of total helplessness and hopelessness, she dropped down to her knees and she threw her hands up in the air and she prayed and she said, God, help me. And so out of all those personal development books that I had read for the 13 years prior to this, I just repeated success. It obviously worked for her. So I just dropped down to my knees next to my bed and I threw my hands up in the air and I said, God, help me. I have no idea what I'm doing. And
Isn't it crazy?
Yeah, go ahead.
Just how we would have that moment and all these things we had been overlooking. You get this all of a sudden immense awareness of all this you've been just tucking under the rug the whole time. Like, that is so powerful. How it just overcame you. Just all of it flowed onto you and everything became visible. And I feel a lot of people have that moment with the Dark Knight where all of a sudden all this stuff we've been running from, which we didn't even realize we were running from, becomes so apparent and raw.
Mm-hmm.
But sorry to interrupt. This is...
Yeah, it's what's wild, man, is when I look back to my marriage and those 7 years of being with my ex-wife, I didn't know what I didn't know. I didn't know what numbing out was. I didn't know about avoidance. I didn't know about attachment styles. I didn't really know about trauma. I was just doing my best with what I had. I just was repeating what I was modeled and doing my best to not repeat what I was modeled because I knew the pain that it created. But I didn't have mentorship. I didn't know that was something to turn towards. I didn't understand that relationship is the most important thing to invest almost all my time and energy. That's why I've devoted my whole life to it. The rewards and the dividends that I get from deepening my understanding of how to be in relationship with myself, my past, my partner, it's the most fruitful investment that I could ever make. And so I'm going to just keep double downing on it because my life continuously gets better. But I didn't know that. That's not something that's taught in school. That's not something that's modeled in our home. It's very rare to see it out in our normal culture of couples really deeply in love and tending their bond and then seeing that love overflowing into all areas of their life. It's rare. And so
it's like even the media doesn't construe that. It's all these extreme highs and lows that everyone thinks is the norm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I had no idea. I had no idea until I was brought to the Dark Night of the Soul. I was brought to my knees, and thank God, because hitting the place, and this is what changed everything for me. When I dropped down to my knees, when I look back to the moment, I'm like, why all of a sudden did that work? Well, I dropped into my own vulnerability. And I acknowledged something that was true. And it was, I have no idea what I'm doing. And then it was me asking for help. That invites the help in. A lot of men are avoiding the very truth that they're not okay. They just keep doing the next thing, especially the men that I work with. I work with high performing men. The men that I sit with in my direct coaching containers, they've got millions of dollars, multiple properties. There's not a lot that they can't experience with the tangible material goods that they have. But when they first sit on my discovery calls, man, I'm telling you, it's not the material goods that creates the joy and the satisfaction. They're miserable when they first meet me. They are broken, lost, scared, alone, confused, can't seem to make a relationship last, or the one that they have is slipping through their fingers. And it's not a me problem. This is what I didn't understand. The men out there that are struggling and stuck in these dynamics, it's not a me problem, it's a we problem. So many men are fed the message in our culture that, you know what, just go, push harder, sleep when you're dead. This alpha culture, really rewards and gives these accolades to do it yourself. Just push, grind. That's an important part of being a man. Yes, that's an important part. But if we don't start to practice that feminine part, which is the part that can receive life, feminine essence is receivership, it's being energy. If we don't learn how to tend that part of ourselves as well, we will continue to create from our head. That's the patriarch. Patriarch is disconnected from nature. Patriarch is power that thinks it has control over nature. True mature integration is the heart leading the head, which is understanding that we are not separate from nature. So we may as well use our skill and our powers to tend it, to take care of it, to listen to it. That's where the satisfaction comes from.
Or it's like where we go from control to trying to just learn that we are part of the flow of life, and that if we can surrender to it and give our all in that essence without controlling the outcome, we can create so much bounty in our lives.
Yeah, so much. There's so many men that are, and I get it, because there are so many rewards around doing it yourself. We live I just want to call it out. We live a very hyper individualistic culture. Just, if it's not working, go read another book, listen to another podcast, which is great. We all need to do that. We need to logically understand what we're saying yes to. Absolutely. But if we don't move towards what's called the bottom up work, this is where we go in and start to build relationships where there's the felt sense of safety and start to integrate our past material. If we don't integrate our history and our childhood, we will just perpetuate the trauma that we experience that is creating the over-functioning, the overriding, the pushing for higher accolades, for more status, more money, but it's not leading to anything fulfilling, because ultimately what every man's looking for when he's pushing and grinding in that way is to feel like he's enough, to feel a deep sense of belonging.
You see that suffering everywhere. It's just, you got people who are doing the 9-to-5, who are giving their all, trying to be everything for their families, trying to stay on that high horse because they know if they show any weakness, then there's vulnerability, and then they're not going to be enough for their families. And it's these beliefs that we've instilled in ourselves due to the modern day ideologies of what culture has taught us and what history has taught us. But we're in this new age. Like, everyone is waking up to how important emotions are. Like, I mean, they talk about feel your feelings, and as much as your feelings shouldn't dictate your life and your outlooks and your opinions, they're important messengers that help guide us. And if we're able to access these, because if we don't, the repression of them creates a distorted sense of the emotional compass, That was one of the things that I really opened my eyes to, is I always thought anger was a bad emotion. So I repressed it, and I'm still learning how to access it. But I realized it made me too trusting with people. Without anger, it didn't allow me to have proper boundaries. And I'm sort of on the feminine side of masculine when it comes to men, which we have a lot of with my generation. But it's learning to find balance in all these emotions, learning to accept them, to express them, and to have a safe place where we can be vulnerable, which I think is an important part of the work you do.
Yeah. This is why men's groups are so important. There's all kinds of different men's groups, and anyone listening, find the one that really resonates and calls to you. The one that really stands out for me because it's changed my life are any of the men's groups. And these are the spaces that I create. These are the containers that I create, even the one-to-one, the whole framework that holds the work that I do is around this premise of what makes a man completely whole and mature, and a fully integrated mature masculine, which is a hot topic. Mature masculinity, divine masculinity. Okay, Mike, what does that mean? Yeah. Mature masculinity is a full integration of 4 archetypes. Every man is meant to have a healthy relationship to lover energy, warrior energy, magician energy, and king energy. And this comes from Robert Moore and Douglas Gillette's work. For anyone listening, if you want to go deeper, they've got books, King Within, and there's one that's coming out in September, which is the archetypes I just named. We need to be able to access all 4 of those archetypes. Alpha culture really emphasizes warrior energy. It just double downs on warrior energy, and it really doesn't acknowledge the others. Maybe a bit of king energy, but it's really heavily weighted in that place, which is an important part. It feels really good. The thing about warrior energy is it's adrenaline. It feels satisfying to have that kind of power and to be in the bumping chest bro energy. But if we don't learn how to embrace lover energy and magician energy, we aren't a fully integrated man, and we will perpetuate trauma. We will misattune to our partners. And I see this so often. There's a lot of alpha culture out there that they seem really strong on the outside, but if you actually go and watch how they relate with their partner, or you see the lack of a partner, it's because the lover energy is also very important. Lover energy is this part of us, for all of you listening, I'll explain it a bit. Lover energy is this part of us that can go into the feminine essence of our experience. It's where we can feel our feelings with our chin up and our eyes open, not having to constrict, to repress, to hide it. A man who's in lover energy can face another human being and let the emotions of his tender heart flow through him. And yes, hate to break it to you, every human being has a tender heart. That's just true. We like to numb out and defend and, protect that's true, but we do. So lover energy starts to build this experience of, I'm going to feel my feelings fully. I'm going to build the capacity to let people into my heart so that I then can hold space for another. One of the biggest pain points that women have is they're not feeling emotionally met. Well, guess what? You can't emotionally meet somebody if you're not emotionally meeting yourself.
Yep.
Can't do it.
You don't understand the language. I see a lot of different clients where it's just, it's kind of like you can't love someone until you love yourself. And this doesn't mean accept yourself fully, all the nice talk around self-love. It is being able to understand what's coming up for you and how things impact you, because through that, you're able to see and empathize with those outside of you that are going through the same thing. If we don't acknowledge our own suffering, then we can't understand the suffering of those around us.
Yeah, you're saying it with so much truth. We can't, and this is a really palpable way of seeing it. I'd say all of us know deep down, we should help marginalized people. We should help the people who have less than us in any way that we can. But intellectually, we know that, and how many people actually do it? And you might be asking, well, why? Why don't I do it? Well, because most people don't actually have the capacity in their nervous system to sit with somebody who has that level of trauma without being super triggered and running away, terrified. We can't actually sit with somebody and help them if we haven't gone to that depth within our own self. We can't. We can't offer what we haven't already experienced. We have to go to the depth of our own shadow. And shadow, as a definition, is just the part of us that's challenged. It's the part of us that doesn't fully got it. The parts of us that are weak or inadequate, that like to control. Everyone has shadow. There's no getting away from it. But it's our right, our responsibility as adults to build a relationship to it, which means descending down into that place to build an ability to hang out there and harvest the gold that's in there, because in every deepest wound is our greatest medicine to the world. So that means we need to understand that, embrace it, and turn towards it. If we just keep numbing it out and dissociating and defending and deflecting, we're actually preventing ourselves as men to go in and gather the gold that's at the bottom of the well and bringing it up to the surface to share with other people. The mission, the satisfaction, the fulfillment that men are actually looking for when they say more money or more status, what they're actually wanting is to feel a deep sense of belonging. They're wanting to bring their God-given gifts to humanity that's in service to something outside of them. Because when that's received, when that's offered and then received, that is the most rich experience that any man can have. And it's not
I'm a
about
firm
the
believer
money.
those are the needs.
That's
Those
the
are the main
deepest.
needs men have. Yeah.
And the funny thing is, when a man finds that level of clarity within himself and knows his God-given gifts and can bring them to the world, the ironic thing is not needing the money and just bringing that essence to his life and to other people is the thing that attracts the most amount of money. And so if we drop the chase for the money and you actually just do the descent with our own being and get to know who we really are, integrate our past, we can then move into inspired action, bring those gifts to the world, and then that will attract people. People pay attention. When someone's living a really good life, when they have a strong partnership, when they're able to accomplish a lot, when their kids are just thriving and they're doing work that they really love, people pay attention. And then what happens when people start to pay attention? They want to learn. What are you doing and how can I do it? And then they pull out their wallets and they pay a lot of money. You know, I have men that pay me just under $100,000 to be guided through the same process so that they can also live in that way. And so going back to these archetypes, that lover energy is going into the feeling part of us. And then we also need to embrace the warrior energy. Warrior energy is the part of us that's get shit done. There's the alpha energy. It's the, yeah, you know what? Let's shift the energy. Let's shift the state and it's time for battle. Battle is the battle of life, the battle of our own insecurities, the battle of the dynamics that aren't creating more coherence in our life. How can I stretch to become the man I was born to be? How can I, reach out and have support and accountability to make sure I'm on task to become that man I say I'm going to be? That's warrior energy. Warrior energy is integral with himself, his closest circle of men and people, and his wider community. That's warrior energy. And then there's magician energy. Magician energy is this part of us as men that can alchemize generational healing, that can go in and turn towards the trauma that he carries and transmute it into gold. And a really beautiful way that this is described is in a book called Iron John by Robert Bly. And it talks about the arc of masculinity and what the journey is. But when a man can go in and do that descent and can really stay in the parts of him that feel unlovable and integrate all that, he can grab that gold and bring it out into the world. And in magician energy, it's the process work that allows the shadow to become the light. And then there's king energy. King energy, or also called sovereign energy. King energy is this energy of connected to the ancestors, connected to God, whatever you want to call it, connected to the universe, and allowing that to pour through his experience, knowing that he in his mind and his little egoic self is limited. And so he connects to the health of his ancestors. He connects to God. He connects to the universe. He connects to the soul of the relationship, and he allows that spiritual part of himself to move through. And then he becomes the instrument. He becomes the container to let the message through. That's the most liberating, freeing place to be, because then we in our heads, and check this out for yourself, but I know whenever I think that I have to do it all, I get super stressed, I get super overwhelmed, and the wave of emotions and overwhelm is so uncomfortable, it makes me want to give up. But if I get out of my own way and I connect to my spiritual practice, king energy, then I actually get to witness what I call Shiva front row. I just get to witness life happening through me. I just ask for it to move through and it happens. That's king energy. King energy is the man who is so free in himself, he's able to see the gold in others. He feels the bounty of his own experience and he wants to share it with his kingdom. He wants to make sure everyone in that kingdom is thriving and doing well, because he knows it's in his enlightened self-interest for his kingdom to be well, because then he doesn't have to worry. If his kingdom is thriving, if his home is thriving, let's make this current day practical. If his wife is emotionally satisfied and feels met and protected and provided for, guess what? She's not going to be so critical. She's not going to be so angry and frustrated or disconnected or ambivalent, which is pushing away. she's going to want to provide. She's going to want to satisfy and do all, the things that men are looking for. And then the kids will be happy. King energy is the one that just knows himself so well, brings that to the world, receives the bounty from it, and then shares it, because it's in the sharing of it that creates the deep inner satisfaction. And so that's the arc of what makes mature masculinity. And without it, we're hopeless. If we keep following the conditioning or the messaging of, I just do it on my own, and we keep believing in hyper-individualism, we're just going to create more and more hurt and rupture, and there will be higher levels of divorce. And that's too expensive of a mistake to make. If we keep trying to do it ourselves, we're wasting this precious time we have on this planet.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things that I've done a lot of research into relationships and attachment styles and sort of the needs of men and women. It's one of my big areas of study. And one of the things I came across that's really resonated with me, which is exactly what you're saying, is it's like when a man can come into his power, and you don't even have to be successful and killing it out in the world. This is a process as you build yourself up, but you can be strong in yourself, be vulnerable with your woman, and create a safe container for them to grow. Like, when they flourish, they will nurture you. The way me and my wife describe it is it's almost like we keep watering each other's gardens and it just keeps trickling back and forth because there's just the support system of understanding and communication and vulnerability where it's like, if I got 20% to give that day, she comes in with that 80, but if she's got 20%, then I'll come in with that 80, and there's never any judgment. When we get triggered, it's a conversation. It's not a blame game. It's all about what's going on here? What's the root? Like, we love doing shadow work together because, in relationships, we bring out the worst parts of ourselves because that's what relationships do when you're around this person constantly. But it's also, I'm a big believer, triggers are the greatest blessing we can have because that's where we can realize, hey, I got work to do. And having a partner to have that mirroring, to do that digging, to create that space for them, and in turn for you to empower you, to lift you up, just like you said. My needs are met tenfold compared to anything I've experienced before since I entered this kind of dynamic. And one thing I just got to add to what you were saying about this map of the archetypes is the episode that just came out before this, the 4 stages of consciousness. The 4th stage is exactly what you described as king energy, which is it's no longer life is happening to me. It's no longer life is happening for me or through me. It is life is me. You realize the God light in everyone you meet. That essence of brilliance and just love, even for the worst people out there, you realize they're the same light, just conditioned by different experiences and beliefs and circumstances that created their little onion that surrounds their soul. And it's beautiful that this is something you guys tap into in your groups. Would you say a lot of people that come in, like one thing I was like you when we had that conversation, I was super Christian growing up. And the transition into spirituality, I still consider myself Christian, but it's like spiritual Christian. But one thing that broke my heart, especially while I was Christian, is how many people lost sight of faith, which I think is really a requirement for this king energy, like you said. And how many people are entering these groups for the first time without much belief in a higher power?
Oh, man. A lot of men that I've sat with over the years don't have belief because of the amount of hurt and harm that has happened in certain forms of religion. And religion isn't the enemy, but the structure and how things are delivered is. So what I mean by this is when I go into my own, and I'll only talk about my own experience here, the reason I experienced so much damage inside being a part of a Catholic organization was I didn't know where I belonged. I would go and show up to this place. There would be a man at the front sharing his wisdom and sharing all this information, and we would watch him do his thing. And we would all sit there and sit and kneel and do all the things, sing a few songs. But never was I asked any questions. Never was I related with. Never was I brought into the conversation. There was a real lack of relationality. And that's what, for me, is the problem in a lot of religions, is it's not a circle. It's a patriarchal setup. And I don't mean to offend anyone out there in any of these structures, but because some do it really well. Some are very relational, but some aren't. Consistently seeing a show of hands, people that grew up in a Catholic environment, the amount of internalized shame just hands across the board for people who grew up in this environment. And I really believe it's that piece. It's the lack of relationality, because the thing that happens, and this is why I've created the Initiated Man. This is why I'm doing a challenge to bring men in and really give them an experience of this men's work, is when I first discovered men's group 10 years ago, almost 11 years ago now, the thing that I started to experience that I didn't even know that I needed is I was sitting in a circle of equals. Everyone was a part of the conversation. Everyone was being vulnerable. Everyone was being encouraging. Everyone had stuff to work through. It was an environment of equality. And if we look back at all the healthiest civilizations and all these indigenous cultures, guess what they all frickin' do? They all sit in circle. They all sit in circle.
Powerful.
They all sit in circle, and they all honor the circle, or what they call the wheel of the year, which is the turning of the seasons. We are on a circular planet. There's power in circle, but the patriarch has created a power dynamic of the man at the front is the one that has it all, and everyone follows that man or woman or whoever it is. That's where we go wrong. That's where shadows get bigger, because we're not getting accurate mirror and reflection. This is why a lot of, and I hate to call it out, it's an uncomfortable thing to talk about, but that's why in a lot of Catholic environments, the priests end up, fondling little boys, and there's a lot of feelings about that. But it's because shadows will take up more space if there isn't a circle to keep things humble, to keep things accountable. What the power of circle, and what I've watched over the years, and I've watched this time and time again, and I can only talk about my own experience because it's pure confidentiality what happens in men's circle. But in my personal experience, I'm forever humbled, because in the moments I get really big and life is going really well, guess what? Life humbles me and it brings me back into, and I'm still human, and I still have shadow to work through, and I still have blind spots. And that's the power of circle, is our brothers next to us will call those places out with love and respect. But it's also something we can't run from if we are in circle, if we are in a shared conversation, because we can't hide if we're a part of the conversation. And that's where the magic is we have to be in connection. There's no man that can thrive in his life and have it all without being deeply, intimately connected with a group of close men. It's a biological need.
You were talking about mirroring in the group. Like, I love how you brought accountability in this, because that is, I've attended a few men's groups just to experience it, and it was so profound. The way that you work through different emotions and how people tell you how it is while it being non-judgmental, which I think is such a critical component. You brought up shame, and I'm a firm believer that shame is the root of any negative emotion we feel. Usually shame is hiding underneath that negative emotion. There's a book I read called Healing the Shame That Binds You. It's one of the greatest books I've ever read by Bradshaw, and it was so enlightening to learn about that. But what would you say the difference is within these groups as far as being witnessed compared to be given advice? Which I think is a big differentiation.
Yeah, it's such a big one. And it's sneaky. Whenever I lead men's circles, it's something that I'll specifically communicate is we're not here to give each other advice unless it's asked for. It's different if somebody comes from their autonomy and they ask for advice. There's a wisdom there. But it's really sneaky where men will want to give advice where it's not asked for. And that's actually disempowering. And it's usually a projection from insecurity inside. This part that wants to fix because it'll feel better in the places where it's maybe not happening over here. And it's important to have discernment around that, because this doesn't just show up in men's circle. This shows up in partnerships. It's one of the most painful places in partnership, where the women are so pissed that whenever they go to share their forever changing feelings, which the feminine essence is that, and this isn't gender specific, this is the feminine essence in all of us, it is forever changing. It is emerging emotion. It doesn't always make sense. It's just energy moving through, and it's incredible. It's light, it's life. And then often men meet it with logic, and they want to fix it. They want to solve it. They want to pull out the facts and the details. And then guess what happens? The feminine then clamps and closes up, gets defensive. She gets really critical and mean because it's not actually honoring the life that's moving through. We're not meant.
Would you say that's kind of the issue a lot of men have when it comes to our own inner energies of balancing the masculine and the feminine? Is when we tend to be so logic driven. So let me get from point A to point C without going to point B, that will shut down the inner voice that is trying to give us emotional guidance. That the feminine inside of us retracts.
It's the ultimate pain point. A man who is living in his head isn't embodied. If we're not embodied, we aren't in the experience that is so satisfying in any man. Even when I experience a man with this, a man who is present. When we think of presence, what is presence? Presence is a man or a person who is so connected to their lived experience, their heart, the energy, the sensation that's moving through them, and centered in that, and then also able to observe everything that's happening in and around him. That's presence. That's what feels so good. Because if a man is connected to himself and he's got himself, guess what? The distress, the chaos, the waving emotion, the anxiety of the partner isn't a problem. It's something to observe in reverence and beauty. And then often, and this is what's really satisfying in partnership, often the feminine is the flowing emotion, the water in her, the energy in her. The water is spilling out, and she's looking for you to be the riverbanks to bring her back home because she can't do it herself. This is what men are being invited to learn how to do within themselves. Can I allow myself to flow into the terrain where I actually don't have any control? Can I learn how to be held in that place, which is what I do with men? It's pretty vulnerable for men who've accomplished, in most cases, more success than I've created. Almost all of them have created more financial success than I've created. But what they come to me for is to experience a man who's devoted his whole life to cultivating presence so that I can hold the tender, fragile places of his experience so that he can learn how to be that in himself. Because if a man drops from his head down into his heart and then learns to start having that to lead his head, that is the ultimate. That is the richest experience. That is the most liberating experience, because then the legacy that's being created is enjoyed while it's being created, not one day.
Yeah. What would you say changes when a man realizes that he's no longer alone in this struggle? When he finally realizes he doesn't have to keep it all to his chest, and that space is really available to him. Like, what changes within that? What does that look like?
The thing that changes every time, and I think of even all my male clients I was working with today, and there's a theme right now. There's a lot of deep inner healing around the relationship to mother right now. But when a man drops into this part of himself that's super vulnerable, that's scared, that feels inadequate, and is met in a way that he wasn't growing up, it softens all the defense strategies. It softens all the guarding around the heart, the tactic and the strategy of trying to intellectually understand everything. It's the most common symptom that I see, is for men, they live in their head. They need to make sense of it. They need to understand of it. It's just a form of control. It's trying to have control of the parts that you can't control. We can't control the feminine essence part of us. We can only learn how to love it. If we learn how to love it, we can guide it. But you can't force it. Think of the feminine. This is proven there. Try to force a woman to do something she doesn't want to do. Not going to happen. or she's going to really be upset about it, and you'll feel it. But what happens, to answer your question, what a man gets every time because I always check in, it's all about embodiment. So when a man drops into experience where he starts to heal or touch a really young part of himself, the work that I do that creates the biggest shift is when we go do inner child work. This is the shadow work. When a man touches a younger part of himself and builds a connection to it, learns how to, and I guide this, where he can scoop up that younger part, relive an experience, but where he can offer the support that he didn't get by feeling it and receiving it in the way that I offer it. It's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. I cry usually often when I witness it as they're crying, and this energy is now starting to release. But the thing that they get for themselves every time when I ask, how are you feeling right now? Every time, calm, so good, so peaceful. Oh my God, this is what I needed the whole time. I just feel relaxed. My God, everything's starting to make sense. Freedom. The thing that men get is freedom. The thing that they think is out there, that they think is in the next thing, they think is in the next book, it's actually in relationship. The wounding that's driving the behavior that thinks the more I have, maybe then I won't have to feel this part of me that's not enough, the part of me that's broken or unlovable. If we go back and give that part an experience of, oh my God, I'm so sorry that happened. I'm here. You're so lovable and I'm not going anywhere. When that part gets that experience, there's no more running. There's no more pushing. There's no more chasing. There's no more grasping for, because that's the thing that they've been looking for the whole time, is the feeling of freedom.
Well, that's so powerful phrasing it like that too, because I mean, it's almost like rejecting half of yourself your whole life. I know I had a friend who was really close to me who constantly was chasing being an entrepreneur, constantly wanting to get that house, provide for the kids, do all these things. And it's just like, that's not really what you're going after, man. Like, dig deep. Like, what is it you really want? It's validation. It's validation's what's hiding behind all these accomplishments. If I get this far, then like you said, I'll be enough. And when you embrace the feminine, you realize you've always been enough. That freedom you talked about.
Yes, and then what's cool that comes from that is it's not this or that, it's this and that. So in the work that I do with the initiated man, there's 3 pillars to it. The first one is initiation, the second one is integration, and the third one is inspiration. And so when I take a man through the initiation of his own lived experience, which is going back and doing the descent, integrating his past, what will generally naturally happen is integration. It will be integrated, and insights and deeper wisdom will start to come, because that's the only place we get wisdom, is integrating our past lived experience. It's not from knowing information. Knowledge isn't the thing. It's the lived experience that has been integrated, where it's not ruling our life. It's not limiting our perspective. It's expanding our perspective. When we do those first 2 stages of the work that I do, we will organically then emerge and arrive into the 3rd phase, which is inspiration. A man that learns how to create his own inner emotional freedom through the method that I use is called Relational Authority. When he does that, he will be inspired to do all of those things, to build the business, to make the money, to provide for the family. But what changes is, instead of doing it, and hopefully at the end result of it happening, he'll then get connection and belonging and meaningful relationships and peace and freedom. The thing that changes is the man who's moving from inspiration is creating from freedom. Instead of building the thing to hopefully get freedom, he's creating from freedom. Because he's connected to what I described in those 4 archetypes. He's connected to spirit. He knows his God-given gifts because he's integrated all that. And there's a modality that I use with men, and it's called the gene keys. It gives them their unique soul blueprint. It's their map. That is the gifts that God gave them, handed to them. When that's known and understood, which is what so many men are looking for, is clarity of what their mission is. When that's just handed to you, then you get to cut off all the distraction and move from a place of inspiration. When I move from a place of inspiration and I watch a man move from inspiration, there's nothing that's not possible. You know, it always makes me think of someone like Richard Branson or Tony Robbins. They seem to have it all. They're happy. They're in their heart. They have meaningful relationships. They have family. They have financial wealth, big impact. They're huge philanthropy. Just endless energy. Why? Because they're moving from inspiration, number one, And if you actually study the ones that are really presenting that they have it all, if you look at it, there's one common denominator. They have a wife, a thriving partnership, a deep, safe, respectful bond, because that is how we are biologically designed, is to be bonded and connected to a partner. That creates resource. It keeps us in our inspiration, just like you described with your wife. It inspires you to want to do the shadow work so that you can experience life in a juicier way, in a more enjoyable way. Some part of you, my imagining, is the more you do the shadow work together, not just on your own, together, the juicier it gets, the more enjoyable it is, the lighter it is. It creates more freedom. It creates more levity. It creates the part that all of us want, which is belonging. And it's done in the connection. It's done in the relationship. It's done in the we.
Well, I think an important thing to bring up here, because I do believe that we really need relationship to grow, to flourish. And we live in an age where not only is isolation bad, but dating and relationships are becoming more and more scarce. It's insane. And I think this is one of the reasons men's groups are so important. And it's not because you're going to find a partner there. It's because when you start doing this work, when you start releasing all this trap energy, you have mirroring, you have a circle that understands you and sees you. You're able to start cultivating that inner authority and start overcoming your insecurities. That was the big thing for me when I started doing this work, is I always thought my insecurities were a part of me. This is just who I am. And man, when I had that humbling dark night of the soul moment, which happened like that, it was just the whole world. All of a sudden, I saw everything that I was running for, and it really was a profound shift. So when it comes to these groups, when it comes to facilitating this change within men, what advice do you have for those out there that are single, feel helpless in the dating scene, who want to cultivate these meaningful relationships and feel like there's not even options out there, which I feel like so many men do?
Mm-hmm. Such a good question. A man who's in that place has to do something really frightening, and that is to make a decision, to decide that you want it. A man first has to decide that he wants it. It's frightening for most men to fully commit and decide that he wants partnership, that he wants to devote to that he wants to go through the initiation that relationship will bring him, that will also bring him to everything he's longing for, which is the full fulfillment of the man he was born to be. It happens through the medium of relationship. So the decision that this man needs to make is to move towards somebody who is living it. You look at all the movies with all the heroes. What do all of them have? Mentors. You need to find somebody who has figured out something you haven't figured out yet. And you need to humble yourself and decide to move towards that. Do the scariest thing of your life, which is what happened with my first mentor. Spending money that I just didn't have. Making an investment in yourself. Take a risk and learn from that mentor. Show up 100%, ripe and ready, pen in hand, willing to feel and learn from that mentor, whether it's me, whether it's you, whether it's another man in work that he's doing in the world. Find somebody that is living actually what it is that you want, you say you want, and decide you want it, and go do the thing that will give you the result of getting it. Learn how to do it. Learn how to get it. Learn how to keep it. Learn how to make it thrive. This is why I've devoted my whole life to this work, because the stronger I am in my relationships, the more confident I am, and the more I attract in all other areas of my life. Because guess what is really attractive? Somebody who has a thriving relationship, a beautiful family, and living the life that brings them into a place of passion. Think of Tony Robbins. And maybe those listening are inspired or not, but he's a big inspiration for me. And what he represents for me is a man who has his heart leading his head, and he's got everything that he wants. It's not everything I'm meant to have, but he shows me the things that I put meaning to, and they shows me the pathway of where it's possible. Any event that I've gone to, Date with Destiny, Unleash the Power, all the things, what he has constantly in all of his stories is the story of mentorship, of guides, of teachers. He brings them on stage. It's not a coincidence he has the amount of success that he has when you look at how much he has stayed a forever student. So many men waste years of their life, waste their hard-earned dollars doing the same old thing, the same old pattern, thinking that they're going to get themselves out of it alone. You're fooling yourself. You need to decide to move towards something that you really want and start learning.
I think one important thing I want to note on here, and I know you will agree with it, is we're talking about these hyper-successful people, right? And when we talk about this type of life that just is magnetic, that we see people having, what we really are talking about here is abundance. And abundance isn't about monetary value. It isn't about all the possessions you own. It is, are you living a life that is aligned with you, that brings you joy and passion? And that could be you backpacking across the country with nothing to your name. That can be abundance.
Yes.
You know, it's different for each of us. So find out what your definition of abundance is. And then find someone who's living that lifestyle.
Yes.
Who's living that dream you want to have. I love it. It's sage advice, because I'll say my life changed when I got a mentor, Justin. And I mean, it was when I started doing shadow work, and he was already big into philosophy and shadow work, and I was able to work through my issues and have someone to guide me through it. And there have been several points of my life where I have grown and expanded when I tried to be an entrepreneur, and it was all the mentors that I came across that helped me expand in my skills and my knowledge and in my strengths. And even if many of those things weren't successes in my life, there was still so much I took away from those periods of my life that they were successes.
Yes, that's it, man. That's the place that brings us into the person we want to be. Mentorship is one of the greatest gifts that we can let ourselves receive. You know, it makes me think of one of my recent clients. And when he first found me, he was one of the most successful on paper men that I've ever met. Multiple properties, big organizations, sold it for millions. And when he showed up, man, he was just a little boy in a man's body, broken open, down, dark night of the soul. And he just poured his heart out. And he just let me know, man, everyone thinks I've got it made on the outside. I don't even know where to go, because he can't share his problems, because everyone projects, like, how could you have problems? You have everything that we all want. And so it actually didn't allow him to go into a healing experience, to be his full self, because of how much power he had. A lot of people can't hold that. And I remember him saying to me, dude, I don't even know what happiness is. I was like, come on, just tell me the last time. You just got to be a memory of you being happy. He's like, I don't have any. It's like, oh, bro. Okay. So broken, so lost, so scared, so alone. And he looked at me and he said, because I told him the price point, he's like, I've never invested that much in myself before. But he said, honestly, I'll pay you $300,000 if you can just help me feel happy. And within 6 months, man, this guy, he was so in his heart, feeling his feelings, just spilling into his true lived experience. And the list is what's so cool, is the legacy that he built, he could now enjoy. Because he could walk into his house, he knew how to emotionally meet his partner. His partner would wrap around him and tell her how just grateful she is that he's finally here, that he's in his heart, that he's able to hold space for his feelings. And them together being able to build their dream home in a way where they just got to enjoy the process and the fruits of everything that he had built the 20 years before that. But now he could actually finally experience it. And I remember he said to me when we finished our work is, man, I had no idea I was just living in my head. My whole business that I created was from my head. And now he said to me, my heart now leads my head. Thank you so much, in tears, because now he gets to enjoy it. Every man deserves to have that experience, but we can't do it if the head is driving the bus. You have to learn how to let the heart lead.
I think an important thing to also circle back with this is finding a mentor is great. And I know for a lot of you listening, that feels almost daunting.
Yeah.
Well, what we were talking about earlier is a great place to start. You know, going to these men's groups, you can find people who are dealing with the same things you're going through or have overcome them. You can find that advice you need to start taking those next steps. I was listening to this beautiful interview with on Andrew Huberman's podcast. I don't know if you ever listened to him. He's a neurobiologist. I love his stuff.
Yeah.
And he was interviewing Dr. K, who is a guy who works with a lot of guys who are failures to launch. And he was talking about one of the big issues people run into is they're, especially after the pandemic, our social cognitive abilities have atrophied. And many people get stuck in that. And I mean, you can be in a relationship, you can go to work, see the same people every day. That's not working the social skills in your brain. You got to put yourself in situations where you're meeting new people and allowing yourself to build resilience again and the ability to deal with being brought into a situation with people you don't know. Because social anxiety is on the rise, and it's because so many people have atrophied in this area. So going into these groups, you can start to build these cognitive circuits and above all, work with people who can help you take the next steps from wherever you're at. And I don't care how low you think you are or how high you think you are. You're going to learn something because we, as me and Justin talk about a lot, we're all growing in our own way, but it's not like this. Here, it's just where in the map are you today? And I might have overcome obstacles that you've never dealt with, but in turn, you've overcome things that I've never had to deal with before. We can learn so much from each other within connection, within brotherhood. And I think it's just so vital that we get out of our heads and into these different groups, whether it's a men's group, a networking group, whatever it is. We need to stop trying to live from our heads. Because I love this is your work, because so many people are trapped.
Yeah, it's an easy place to get trapped because then we don't have to feel all the uncomfortable things that are actually going on in the body. The body keeps the score. It's been proven time and time again by all the greats, all the neuroscientists. It gets stored in the body. If we don't integrate it, it gets frozen, it gets collapsed, it gets stuck in the cells of our tissues, and it will stay there until we're ready to deal with it. And so it can be easy to hear, get out of the head, but you're probably most of you are probably hearing this from your head. And so I want to give you the permission to go as slow as you need to. You don't have to do anything, but just ask yourself the question, what's it going to cost you? What's your life going to look like in 5 or 10 years if you don't decide something different than what you're already doing? And so be gentle with yourself. One of the biggest things is you'll most likely feel resistance, but just move towards it a little bit. I'm going to give you guys all a free gift. They'll post the link here. There's a free download of Masculine Feminine Polarity. You can go click that, download it. It'll get you in my newsletter. If you feel a resonance to what I've shared today, just go towards somebody who's sharing something interesting that you feel curious about and just go slow. You don't have to do anything right now or tomorrow, but just start paying attention to something that is new and different and where your curiosity is, and just go slow, take in information, listen to, watch some social media clips and start to bring a new perspective. And then you'll know when you're ready to decide. You'll know when you want to make the big shift. And then when you feel that, my advice to all of you is decide, jump, and do it. Your heart will let you know when you're ready, but you have to jump.
Well, it's you got to meet yourself where you're at. It's one of my favorite phrases because that was where I suffered the most in all of the ventures I had before I started this journey. Is I'd always try to project myself on the top of the mountain and then think it's just a few steps away. I'd never think who do I want to become, but what would be the next step of that becoming that person. What does that look like? How do I start building that accountability? What is the one little shift I can make? Because real change happens in those 1-2 degree shifts, not in those massive turnarounds. That's why New Year's resolutions don't work, right?
Yeah, that's it, man. I just loved this conversation. Thank you so much for having
amazing.
Me. Yeah, appreciate you.
Thank you so much for coming on. We'll have all your notes below, all your links below to check Mike Elliott out. I tell you what, he knows what he's talking about. He's really living the dream that we all want right here. Abundance, right?
Yeah. Such an honor to just be in Brotherhood, share this conversation, and thanks for doing the good work that you're doing. Thank you all who are listening to this. And, if you're still here, beautiful work, just showing up for yourself and bringing in new ideas.
Amen to that.
Mm-hmm.
With love and gratitude, ad lucem.